So, this is another round of me meeting online with people that I just love and admire and respect very deeply on many different levels, to talk about things that might interest people who are within my online communities, wherever that is. And so today that's with Pamela von Sabljar. And I always worry that I don't say that right, Pamela, so I hope you'll forgive me. We just we were just talking about how to present you. And what came out from me without thinking about it too much was that if we were a village, I would want you to be the chief. And this ended up being actually a way that really resonated to present you, sort of the way that I was speaking into why I came with that.
And how come?
And
Like I asked, how come? Yeah.
how come? Exactly. And I think that if we have to come up with what is the ultimate thing that we might hope for in a facilitator of spaces, then I would also come with the name Pamela von Sabljar. And I think it's about this amazing ability you have to sense into the space in between, allow for complexity to be there in each person's uniqueness and the interactions of people and spaces, that you really have this ability to hold and allow for that complexity while also really remaining in very strong integrity in yourself and with the values and the intention of the space that you're creating or co-creating. And then that you're also able, though, to bring in the singularity of direction, knowing when to, okay, we're going to move here, we're going to move here, but still letting that complexity of the space feed into that. I feel like I'm sort of getting loopy in my words now, but I hope that it's making sense also from the outside. And I think the only other thing that I would add to that is the sort of flavor of leadership which you have, which is to really step up as a leader and claim the role of leadership without putting yourself in a hierarchy of trying to place yourself above. I feel that you remain in your humility while also being in your dignity as a leader. And I think that's really special. And I've heard you talking before about things that are related to how we express ourselves that just made me really want to invite you on to talk to me. So thank you for being here.
Mm. Yeah, and thank you for sharing your experience of my leadership and facilitation. And yeah, and also the gift you gave me when you reflected back when I asked you about why would you like me to, why would you like to have me as a chief in a tribe? And yeah, it will make me reflect a bit more for a couple of days into the future. I can notice. And I'm really eager to drop into this conversation deeper. Like, yeah. So where are we going? What direction are we going?
Yeah, I think it would be beautiful to start off with the question of why do we hold back? There can be, what I said to you before was that there can be so many moments during a day when we can either hold back or feel the urge to hold back from saying what we really mean. And I think it's really nice to start with the question of why do we do that? Why do we hold back from saying what we really mean?
The first thing that comes up for me is fear. And what I've noticed in many, 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 many conversations over the like 25 plus years that I have had the possibility to meet people and facilitate people in groups and organizations is very often the fear of hurting someone. We are empathic humans. So that is the first thing that comes to me. What happens for you when I say that?
The first thought I get actually is that really the ultimate fear? Is the fear of hurting someone really the end point of that? Or what is the consequence of hurting someone? Why do I fear hurting someone? Do you get what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah, absolutely. And the response that comes like up for me directly when you say that is that's the like the need of belonging. Like there is a consequence if I hurt someone is that I will be excluded out of the tribe. And we're both empathic animals, and we are tribe animals, and not to belong, not to connect, not to be in that way loved. That's one of our 5 essential needs to belong. I think that's another one, and I wouldn't say that covers the picture.
No.
Because you can then add on conditioned fear of conflict, like what is the stories I hold about conflict, because that can happen if I hurt someone. It can be a narrative around what you say and you do not say. So I would say there's multiple perspectives of why do we hold back to say what we really mean? And also, I think if I say what I really mean, I also have to take responsibility to what I say. And I also have to have a moment of losing control. Because if I say what I really mean, then I have to wait for the response that comes when I say what I really mean. So I'm not manipulating or managing or controlling the space with the other, that I'm actually saying what I mean, then I let it go and allow you to respond. And that moment of losing control for many people can be very scary.
Yeah. So when I don't say what I mean, part of what I might be doing is sort of curating the the response. Like I'm
Controlling the response.
managing and control, right.
Mm.
And I guess why is the response predictable? Or yeah, I guess if I express myself in a way that promotes harmony, then I can quite easily predict. I guess what I'm trying to get at is, can I ever really predict what the response is going to be to what I say? Maybe not really, but if I say something that is likely to have a non-threatening or a non-risky reaction, then that unknown is less scary to me than the other unknown of a more harmonious way of interacting. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know if I get what you mean, but I can try talking it back to you. What I do think I hear is that you're pointing at a distinction point, like a distinction point of, can I really ever know what the other person's response is? And in one way, in a very simple way of saying it, you could say, no, we can't. And in another way, you can say, yes, and humans are pattern, and our brain is really good at looking at pattern recognition. So if we have lived, we do have a sense of, if I show up like this, then I know people have responded like that. And if this person in front of me is the pattern of other people I've had in front of me, there is some kind of sense of predictability. And if you also take into consideration, as I believe, that we are pack animals that forgot we're pack animals, and that we are born into be full body sensing beings. So we sense more than most of us recognize. So we probably pick up subtleties in the communication that's beyond the verbal. So we probably have a pretty good sense of what will create disharmony on the other side and what will create harmony. And I would say, especially if we're women, because from the perspective I sit with, because of I'm just taking the biological perspective, we have more than that. But out of that perspective, we are designed by evolution to carry and birth and nurse a child. So we need to be even more in tuned and capable of sensing the space with the other. So
Mm.
with that, I probably do have an experience of how to curate, how to manipulate, how to control my self expression so it will accommodate or harmonize with the other. And most likely, we do also choose to be around people that is the pattern from our own childhood. So subconsciously, I think we do have a quite good sense of what's okay and not okay, even if you could say in a distinction point, we can never predict. And on the other side, most likely we can. So I don't know if that made it clear, but that's what I heard you say, these two distinction points.
Yeah, yeah,
And
it very
also,
much
I also think
resonates.
it's about putting myself out there. It's also about, like, why do I hold back to say what we really mean? Putting myself out there, like truly, to show my own radical self expression. I think that's scary for many people, both for several reasons, I think. But one reason, if we can look around in our society, it's not really that what comes back at us is self-radical responsibility. Like, I traveled to Belgrade a couple of days ago and I had my pink coat on. It's like very pinky, light pink coat. And like everyone on the airport, like it's gray or black. Like it's just one color, but just that little observation and it could, yeah, we could paint it with so many more examples. That's not, is it really radical self-expression? If you compare how, like, our 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old express themselves with colors and nudity and clothes, and yeah, just there. And then also, like, the modern society in itself is based, one core truth in the modern society's narrative is separation, and separation creates disconnection. So, how could we, as humans, as a part of a global and wider modern narrative, actually do have ease when it comes to radical self expression? Yeah, that's just what comes. What does that evoke for you?
Yeah, it brings me back mentally to the topic that you already brought of belonging, and to perhaps a kind of assumption that is there that in order to belong I must sacrifice my individuality. And it makes me ask the question, where does this come from? Where does this assumption come from? Or why is it not more natural, intellectually and logically, for those two things to coexist? That I can be in radical self expression and I can belong. I don't know. I don't... There's a question. You know, why is that? Even when we all go all the way back to when we were living in tribal communities, if this is part, because we often hear about this, you know, like the structure of our brains is still very much that of when we were living in tribal societies, and that our genetic makeup has not changed very much from those times, because it just takes so long for us to evolve on the level of the DNA. But even then, why would being different threaten the sense of belonging to the group?
Again, I'm pausing to see what really wants to be a part of this conversation. Because in one way, you could say tribalism is about othering. It is about saying we as a tribe against another tribe. So that is already there. You have different equals perhaps a threat,
Mm.
and also how much of that is really true, and what story is telling that story. Because I also know that there can be tribes living next to each other when there is enough amount of space and resources. There is respect for the other, and there is meeting point twice a year, like winter and summer, coming and sharing each other's overflow and gifts. And by that, the different groups or tribes are actually expanding. And when we squeeze the space that as I understood it through the story of modernity, then the othering was like maybe coming more into the picture because the resources and the space was not enough for us to live in harmony in diversity. Uh, so I find myself like stepping mindfully and carefully, both because I don't feel that I had too much of like a deep historical fact and knowledge about. I know I have perspectives, and I've been in different conversation with people who have been really good and have had as their expertise to really understand these dynamics. But I just can notice, I can see myself when you ask that question, and I like go out wide. I look at, yeah, but do we actually know how tribes really lived when there was space and resources? And what
Mm.
stories that we're using to tell the story of the othering or the tribalism? And at the same time, I can just notice if I take that paradox that I could see you were holding of radical self-expression and belonging, because also if you look into like a indigenous society, you can see there is different roles, and there is a self like a diversity in self-expression, because that's also how we became resilient and powerful as humans, because we pack animals, we can communicate, we can share stories, and we are like actually designed to care for each other. So there is a very altruistic side of humanity and humans also. So if I'm like pulling all that down to us right now, because I also know that if you go back in history and look at consciousness development, we know that 2000 years ago we were more in a coherent group consciousness, and there was not so much room for the individual consciousness. So like and then the consciousness has evolved, and we now have the capacity to bring myself out of a group, out of a tribe, creating a new tribe. And now you can notice, like in the zeitgeist of consciousness development, that it seems like human as a race is turning back into, how can I enter a group, cohere in, and remember that I'm a pack animal, and bring back my my potential and understanding and knowledge and embodiment of sensing, and like the social nervous system and regulation and so on, and at the same time bring diversity through individuation. So I hold this like large thread. There's a bit more meta, and if I like and if I pull them down to my very human experience, I think that's what I have found myself practicing when it comes to my own self expression and my own navigation of, why do we hold back to say what we really mean? Like, how can I hold my radical self expression and my deep sense of need and want to belong? And how can I find myself choosing to belong to groups that can actually receive and accept and enjoy my radical self expression? And also, when I find these groups where there's like this resonance, this match, how can I also, in moments, hold my self expression in service of what's bigger than me, and gracefully dance and play between these two perspectives? I think that's, yeah, where I feel that there is I gained a lot of wisdom there through my life, because it's been an exploration, and it's been in moments really hard. Yeah. Going from
Mm.
maybe starting out at a place of feeling like a misfit or lonely or like an alien. And no matter what groups I entered, I always felt that like the outsider. And then bouncing in the polarity, I don't need any. I don't need any. I can be by myself and isolating and alienating myself towards groups or others, or finding myself in groups, but my radical expression was more important than like the culture of the group, and by
Mm.
that not respecting my own surrounding of what I actually was a part of, or minimizing myself for wanting to belong, both like in groups and in pairs, and then like yeah, swimming these rivers, like yeah.
Mm. I hear you. I think it's so beautifully expressed. This kind of dance between um, radical self-expression and honoring and respecting the collective. Yeah, and I love the image of it as a dance. I know there's more questions to explore, but I think it could be very interesting to bring, if we're still on the question of why do we hold back from saying what we mean, I think it could be interesting to talk a little bit about both shame and guilt. These are two that I hear a lot about from my clients when they are in that active work of saying and expressing what they really mean. And it seems that shame is often connected with the radical self-expression and the like being seen in one's uniqueness and openness and sort of unique expression of themselves. And guilt is one that often comes when it comes to saying something that might hurt somebody or asking for support in a way that might risk burdening somebody. I guess mostly those two, actually. I guess I'm quite interested to talk about the guilt side. Is this related to self-worth and self-esteem? This guilt feeling that I might feel and I know a lot of people feel this, feeling guilty about asking for help or feeling guilty about receiving support.
What would you say?
I would say, yeah. I think, at least for me personally, it's a lot about self-esteem. When I'm feeling that guilt, I mean, it also comes from some patterns, good children are happy with what they're given. They don't ask for things. So yeah, I think it is often very much about this. Like if I really think about how it feels for me when I have capacity, but to provide support for somebody is actually a very beautiful feeling. But my go-to assumption when it comes to receiving support from other people is I'm being a burden, I'm being annoying, I'm putting them out of their way. And I think that is where the guilt is coming from. And I think that this is, if I trace it back to the core, it is a self-esteem issue.
I can relate. And in my system, I think I have connected it to if I ask for support, I'm burdening people, like, and I should be able to manage it myself. So I wonder if the core goes back to if we haven't received regulation, and how do you say, when something is obvious support. It's something that just is. And I would probably, I can notice I find myself like an inner exploring right now. I'm just like, I, because in one way I could go with the word self esteem or self worth, of like not being worthy of being supported, like feeling guilt that I can't manage myself. Uh, I can find myself feeling powerless when I need to ask for support, and I wonder, out of like a neuroscience perspective, I don't hold this perspective, like knowledge perspective myself, but I wonder what if we look at ourselves as pack animals, like if I would, if it would be normal and natural for my system as a child to be regulated by calm and connected adults, like a social field of calm and connected. That was like obvious that, of course, if you need support, there's support because that's what we are. I can just find myself, I can know I'm mumbling or rumbling a bit, but I can find myself just curious of how would this be described out of a neuroscience or pack animal perspective of feeling guilt when you might hurt someone or burden someone. Yeah, I don't have a clear answer here, but it just like I can notice it evoked my curiosity.
And I think for me it brings up sort of like another dance between, again, between expressing myself and my uniqueness and also caring for the collective, which also as pack animals and empathic beings is something that we do, and that is so very beautiful also that we do. But I think that what we can see, and maybe it is a cultural thing, but certainly at least talking about Northern Europe, what we can see is people holding back more often than they would really like. And people talk from expressing themselves fully and sort of call it out as an issue. And maybe then we can transition a little bit to talking about what happens when we don't say what we mean.
I was like, wow, that's such a broad question. And then it came like just like this very playful response of, we will die with the songs unsung and the text unwritten inside of us.
Ooh.
As I said before, in a more like joking way, but there's many things that can happen, but one thing that can happen is resentment can be built up. We're not clearly expressing to people around us what we need or expect. And I can see that we can create this ease of it can be quite stressful to hold yourself back and not do or say what we mean. I would also say soulless, like a sense of like losing connection with your essential core, meaning a sense of meaninglessness, because we come so far out of alignment of what we really want, desire, need, and boundaries. And how I look at life, like when we come to a moment when we come too much out of alignment, life gives us a big smack. So we have the possibility to go through some kind of challenge, hardship, suffering, and by that crack deeper and open and be able to listen to the deeper longings that actually will aliven us and bring us into the right time and space and environment.
Yeah, I see it as so core, almost as a core drive or a core need to feel expressed as a person. And I mean, I don't know enough about it to really feel confident and comfortable to talk about it. But I have been watching some YouTube video interviews about, some degenerative conditions and how they might actually be connected to not expressing ourselves. I think there was an expert talking about ALS, and the technicians who were testing people with this disease, they could quite accurately predict whether someone would or would not have the disease, because the ones that did have it were overwhelmingly nice people and very much people pleasers. This like constant overriding of what I really want, what I really need. And I've been in this so much myself, sort of just feeling like I've lost myself and who I actually am, what I even like, because my antennae are just too constantly pointing towards what other people might want or like or need. Or another thing that I felt is this sort of like tension that can come with this almost trapped feeling from knowing what I want, but not feeling able to go against what somebody else wants or wants from me. So I'm just like so constricted and so contracted until at some point there's just this. And if I don't do that for myself, something will do it for me.
Yeah, and also for me, it's one, you're talking about the inner want and what and others, but I have been so good to internalize that outer voice, like in myself. Like I hold myself back many times. Like I don't even always dare to speak the truth of what I want or what I really mean to myself. So how I can contract and keep myself back because of my inner voice of don't do that because then that would happen and so on.
Mm.
So for me, it has been very much an exploration of realizing that that voice that wants to hold me back has 1,000 faces and voices, and it's very tricky because when I get to know like one personality or voice how it sounds, and it can't get me there, then it's just like and then it's like transform and become something else. And if I'm not staying awake, I'm like, oh wow, now is that like really hard inner harsh inner judge that guilt trips me and like don't allow me to actually go for what wants to be expressed through me or what I really truly want to express. And then it just shows up in a new phase. I don't know if you can relate,
Oh,
but
wow.
that's very
Very much.
yeah.
Very much. And sometimes I feel so on it, like I'm a sneaky ninja of the mind. And other times I can suddenly feel like I just wake up because I've been in some other iteration of something that I'm actually not aware of. Almost like I get the image of, like the virus that keeps mutating when
Mhm.
we find the
Yeah,
find the way to treat it, and it just mutates around it.
yeah.
Almost like that.
And I actually love that metaphor. You could call that a metaphor, right? Because some virus, we have them inside of us for the rest of our life. They never go away. And I think it's really serving for us to understand that our psychology, like our ego, our psychology, most likely will never go away. So just knowing that that virus is in there and mutating, it creates a very, for me, like a healthy and soft and awake relationship. Then in the start of my personal development, I thought I could accomplish and perform, and like the goal and the end goal was like it will disappear, I will get rid of it, and then I got it. Then I fixed the problem. Thank God I woke up and realized that most likely it will be a part of me until I die, and it's about building capacity and gracefully navigating that virus and be awake to the mutation so I can just keep on navigating it as gracefully. And every year, hopefully, there is a little bit more grace and a little bit more flexibility in the dance and a little bit less rigidity and more choice and more space and more play and more ease. And having this deep compassion that I will fall asleep and I will wake up and yeah.
I really like that you bring that, actually, and I really try to take care of how I present myself in that way. That I don't have it. I'm not like I haven't nailed it. All of this stuff that I talk about and that I work with my clients, and I don't think it's possible to nail it. But if I were to pretend that I had, it would risk creating this feeling of that, this sort of like defeatist thing of if we think that some people have nailed it, and we'll always know in ourselves that we haven't, we'll always feel kind of less than in some way. So that's very much what I also say to the people who are working with me closely. I'm like, haven't nailed it. I don't think we can nail it, and it's very important and beautiful to work with it. And we can take steps to expressing and feeling that we express
Mm.
more and more of ourselves. And I think that one of the most beautiful ways to do that is creating more and more safety in here, and becoming more and more skilled at regulating our nervous systems so that we have more space inside us to hold, going back to the beginning also, to hold the risk of saying what we really mean and not knowing how it will be received. That holding that unknown, I think, is one of the very important parts of the work that we can do, even if there's no like endpoint destination.
No, we're not a
Do you have?
problem to be fixed. We're a process to be lived. And in that, I just want
Yeah.
to underline when you said feel expressed. And I think just in these two words are so much wisdom that I wonder if it is like the algorithm in life itself is to feel expressed. Like if there is like a fulfillment, what if the fulfillment is to feel expressed? And just like the image of a flower comes in, like a flower that turns to the sun and the petals are opened and it's like, and it's opened, and when it's like blooms, I imagine that the flower feels expressed. So I imagine that that is the core, like core seed, the core algorithm in every expression of life, that it wants to feel expressed. So when we are holding back, life will pull us in a direction, throw us into corners to wake up, so we can express, evolve, and express, and have a deeper sense of felt, like to feel expressed. And I just think so much beauty in that. And also, as we a little bit touched on before in radical self expression, the discernment and the sovereignty and the maturity to distinct when to fully radical self express and when to not. Sometimes that's not the most loving thing to do, to say what we really mean, because there is perhaps a lack in the receiver to receive us. Then there is no not loving towards the other or ourselves, or it's not the right time, it's not the right space, it's not the right place. And to have that, I would say, wisdom to discern and gracefully express what's needed, and then make a choice if it's for me here to stay or for me here to leave. Because I do believe that if we can choose, if we have that possibility to radical self express so we feel expressed, that's the life I want to live anyway.
Me too. That was so beautiful. And I think that if this were a book, that would be the ending. I don't know if you feel the same, do you?
Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to add to this? To me, it felt like the most beautiful completion. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Pamela. I feel really alive from this.
Beautiful.
Mm.
Thank you for the invitation.